I'm assuming sure, that's fine. We're in no rush because of that, and I assume Eddie hasn't told us although we never
He was trying to get what rearrange this.
but you never.
We never got
Okay,
so
that's all right. Okay, good enough. But you check on it. You let me know what the text rate is.
yeah, it's like. By the way, after we had that, the meeting, and I wanted to make equalizations from 1957, and that was an equalization.
Was it? And do you know if it was originally white or African American? I see. In Chester County, it's very distinctive because the first grade was K-5, which was which school was African American. The first and second was third and fourth was African. Fifth and sixth was white. Middle school was white. High school was built in post all of that. So, but I mean, it's really fascinating to see. I mean, say what you will about the motivations that I included out the ruling program in the course of 6 years, replaced hundreds of schools. It's pretty remarkable. And it was huge. We've never done anything like it. There's never been anything on that scale since the state's act. It's pretty
It's always an opportunity.
We okay with that front? Okay. You're good. Yes, sir. And to all of those who are with us in person as well as remotely via YouTube live stream, welcome to the October 12th, 2022 BAR large meeting in the public room at number 2 George Street. My name is John Robinson. I'm the chairman of the BAR large. I'll be hosting the event into this afternoon and perhaps early evening. The other board members present with me this afternoon are James Metters, Seton Brown, and Kara Wheeler. Kara, thank you for, Kara serves as one of our alternate members for those who are not familiar with that, and we appreciate the fact that you've been willing to sit in several times. We may have Eddie Fava with us shortly. Nonetheless, we do have a quorum for the purposes of conducting business this evening. City staff present with me this afternoon are the city architect, Tori Parrish, and Lawrence Courtney. For those of you not familiar with our agenda, the order of each meeting is as follows. There's first an introduction and overview of a project by city staff to the board and for the benefit of the public. There is then the applicant's presentation on any given agenda item. That has a 10-minute time limit, which can be expanded at the discretion of the chair. The applicant just needs to ask for a reasonable extension of time. Any questions of the applicant can be asked after that by board or staff. Any and all presenters be they the owner, developer, designer, consultant, or any other affiliated party with a project, should state their name for the record. Any person affiliated with an application, those same parties, the developer, owner, designer, architect, consultant, or others, should speak during the applicant presentation portion rather than the following public comment period. For the benefit of the public, those who haven't heard it before, over several years and through COVID, we adopted a little bit of a modified format pursuant to our rules. We now require all written comment to have been submitted in advance. That comment has been distributed and digested by the board prior to tonight's meeting. It will not be read into the record, but it is available as a public record. We don't do that for the benefit of time, both for our applicants and for the general public. Written public comment was due noon the business day before the meeting. And again, it's been transmitted to the board members as soon as possible thereafter. Unless it was determined necessary by the chair, those comments are not read aloud during the meeting. Written public comment period, or notice of public comment period, is followed by public comment for any member of the public here this evening. There's a 2-minute time limit on these remarks unless extended by the chair. The applicant does not respond to comments made during the public comment period. As applies to the applicant, any member of the public wishing to speak should clearly state their name and address for the record this evening. The public comment period is then followed by city staff comments and recommendations, which you can summarize in writing, but they will also be spoken to by Ms. Parrish and Mr. Courtney as appropriate. This period is followed by an applicant response or clarification to either the public comment or the city staff comments or recommendations. There's a 5-minute cap on this. The applicant does not need to use the time unless they feel it is necessary. This is followed by board discussion and a potential vote on any given agenda item. The applicant presentation and public comment period is now closed. The applicant should only clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair. If the applicant wishes to do so, they should raise their hand or let me know that they wish to address or rebut any inaccurate information stated by the board or staff. I note as a procedural matter before we begin that item 3, which is the 295 Calhoun Street project 7-story version, has been withdrawn from the agenda. Item number 5, 404 King Street at the Conservatory has been withdrawn. And item number 7, the 214 to 216 Spring Street item has also been withdrawn. In each of those instances, they were withdrawn by the applicants. This is a polite reminder to those with us tonight to please turn off cell phones and other potentially disruptive devices. This is also a reminder to both the applicant and any member of the public speaking tonight that the purview of the BAR is governed strictly by ordinance, our rules, and other protocols. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, livability concerns, or other matters that are not of an aesthetic nature that are subject to the purview of the BAR cannot be addressed here. And if we have those comments, I will politely ask the person to refrain from those and focus their comments or criticisms on those issues that are germane and within the purview of this board. Further information just for the benefit of the public, and particularly those on live stream or those who are here tonight who wish to see results. You, of course, could be here in person at our regularly scheduled meeting. We have a YouTube stream at the address shown. Written public comment was required to be submitted by noon yesterday. And for the benefit of the public, one can leave a message at 724-3781. Use the citizen participation portal at innovate.charleston-sc.gov, or obviously well in advance, use snail mail, send the item to the city architect at 2 George Street, Charleston, South Carolina. And I believe that, I'll just finish this off for those wanting to hear public results. They will be posted at charleston.sc.gov/BAR based on tonight's votes. One final reminder for board members, obviously is particularly important tonight. Board members will be polled by myself and ask for a vote on each motion for any given agenda item. Each member when voting should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. And additionally, if I have misstated or misinterpreted your motion, you should feel free to correct the chair while I make notes in writing. With that, I believe we have agenda item number 1, approval of the minutes. Can I entertain a motion from a board member to approve our last minutes? Is there a second? Have a motion and a second. I'll go down the roll. Ms. Wheeler, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Brown?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Meadows?
Yay.
And myself, yea in favor. It's taken care of 4-0. Now move to the substantive applications. Agenda item number 295 Calhoun Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 295 Calhoun Street is requesting conceptual approval for new construction of a mixed-use development and requesting one additional story based on architectural merit and context. The Charleston Village neighborhood in the Heights District 7 and then the Old City District. Context slides for you. This one is between Alberta Long Lake and Calhoun Street. And some existing photos of the property. This one, sorry, I'm slower than that one at Calhoun and Halsey Boulevard. And along Calhoun Street, looking east. Roper property across the street. Calhoun Street. All right, we'll have the applicant present.
Very good. The applicant has an initial 10-minute period, and if they want to go ahead and request an extension of either 5 minutes or double time, they're certainly allowed to. Ms. Palin.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson, and we would request an extra 10 minutes.
Certainly, 20 minutes is reserved for the applicant.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, I'm Alice Taylor. I'm a lawyer here in Charleston, and I am here representing S.E. Calhoun, which is the developer of the apartment building that they want to build at 295 Calhoun Street. During the last year, there's been a lot of talk about what has happened. During the last year, my client, we requested pre-litigation mediation, which is allowed under the South Carolina Code, and it was developed to give an opportunity for an applicant like S.E. Calhoun and the city to try to resolve differences and get to a point where they agree. So we use that, and I can tell you that the mediation's been over for a long time, but the feedback has continued up until last week, going back and forth between Jan McCognick, our architect, and Tori Harris and Lawrence as well. And we appreciate all of the hard work that everyone has done to get us where we are today. We dismissed our appeal and came back with this new building. And I know there's been a lot of statements in the press and by some of the groups that S.E. Calhoun was supposed to start over. There is no requirement anywhere that a developer has to start over. And especially in a situation like we have here, where we have a limited piece of property and it's zoned for exactly what they want to put there, and there are no setbacks in the zone. The BAR, I just want to make a few comments. The BAR derives its authority from the BAR ordinances. And I know that Mr. Robinson was citing exactly what the purview is. And he was 100% correct. There is a South Carolina Supreme Court holding that I want y'all to be aware of, because you do have this question. And so the Supreme Court held, when exercising discretion, a local board must be guided by standards which are specific in order to prevent the ordinance from being invalid and arbitrary. And the city of Charleston has adopted standards, and they are in the zoning ordinance. And what I'm going to refer to is section 54-240C, because I think that is probably the most important standard right there. That section limits the BAR's power, and I'm going to quote, to require the use of architectural techniques such as building facade and mass modulations or adjustments to the footprint of a structure on a site to achieve appropriate form and proportion of a structure in relation to its immediate surroundings. so long as such techniques do not unreasonably restrict the use of a site in light of its underlying zoning. So what does that mean? It means that you can do certain things, but you cannot restrict the use of the site in light of its underlying zone. So this property is clearly zoned for 7 stories and an 8-story if there was architectural merit. And you probably wondered why we initially put in 2 applications. One required architectural merit, the other did not. And whenever you've got something like architectural merit, you're talking about discretion. That same section prohibits this body from making, and I'm going to quote again, requirements except for the purpose of preventing designs of developments which are not in harmony with the prevailing character of Charleston or which are obviously incongruous with this character. The next section also says things that you need to be aware of, and I know you are. It sets forth specific design characteristics which would allow the BAR to deny or defer an application. So these are specific standards. So if you find that this application has arresting and spectacular effects, violent contrast of materials or colors, and intense or lurid color, a multiplicity or incongruity of details resulting in a restless and disturbing appearance, and the absence of unity, visual compatibility, and coherence in composition, form, and proportion, not in consonance with the prevailing character of the immediate surroundings of the new structure. So if you find any of those things, that would be a reason to deny the application. And that those are specifically set forth in the zoning ordinance. I don't believe that any of these are present in the application. And if they are, I'm sure you're going to point them out to my clients. The thing I want you to focus in on too is the fact that it's the prevailing character of the immediate surroundings of the new structure. Immediate surroundings is defined in the zoning ordinance as, quote, abutting properties and those on both sides of the street of the block in which the building is located. So your job is to look across the street where we have Roper Hospital, down the street where you have the Children's Hospital, you have the Ashley House, then you have the venue space that's on the other corner. That's the immediate surroundings. So you would have to find that there's something about this design that is not in consonance with the prevailing character of the immediate surroundings. We're here in good faith. All my clients want to do is to be able to go forward and build their project. There are many good parts of it. They're going to develop the Alberta Lawn Lake and put a nice trail around it and make it beautiful. They're going to do a lot of drainage improvements in the area, which we believe will help the Charleston Village neighborhood and other areas in there. It's going to be a great contribution to the medical district, which they are in the middle. I want to thank you for your consideration of this new application, which incorporates, I believe, 40 changes since the last time it came before you. My client did start over, and they have come back with a much better building, and they are very happy to present it to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. You can go
Go one back, please. Yeah. So, Alan mentioned that, we have to start over, but we did one thing where sometimes, we work on something for too long and you don't think that you can come up with anything else and you start going in a circle. So what we did a quick exercise in our office with other architects actually. So giving them lots of constraints, the context, roughly the program of the site. Say, what do you think? What you can come up with? And we actually look at a bunch of sketches, we look at it, brainstorm it, and we realized that almost every single person arrived almost with the same site layout conception, with some minor tweaks, details. But if we put all the retail, everything on the ground floor of this building, which we want to really create on the waterfront, and it's going to be incredible, and we know that. And this area, I spend quite a bit of time in that area now. There needs restaurant, it just needs activity, and it's going to be great. If you want to activate the Calhoun Street, which would be the lobby leasing areas and some small coffee shop, if you don't want to put a parking garage on your house's street or the park that we are creating, this building and the whole layout of the building is pretty much set because you can obviously do parking underground. There's just no way to do it. It's just biologically it's impossible. So that would have been the only way you can rethink this project. So simply way, if you just do it, you start with diagrams, you build it block by block, like these little Legos. You end up conceptually with almost the exact same thing. So we said, okay, we had the mediation meetings, and actually we were so happy because we got actually direct feedback. It was great for us. We were very happy we could have done it because that was the first direct feedback we really actually got. So we went to the drafting boards immediately, and we talked with the staff and worked on so many different options, went going back and forth, and quite frankly, what we're going to show you we like it better than we did. I mean, it was great, and I think it's we can be all proud of it. It was a teamwork, really, and I think it's the building the lost units. Obviously, it became less economical, but we can make switch one slide. But so we look at a building. Okay, so the building is roughly needs to be same in terms of the basic massing. What can we do with the building? How can we bring the scale down? And usually, most of the time, we look at it. Calhoun, obviously, you have Roper Hospital, a Children's Hospital. They have much taller building, bigger buildings. There's no reason to really bring the building down. But we did feel that from House Village and from the south side, the building needs to do something. And we felt if we create the steps in the building, it's actually going to do two things. It's going to bring the scale down in the south, but also it's going to break the long facades along east and west, the house here and the park that we are creating. So we immediately felt that it was a really right response. So there was one thing that we did to massive, and it was about 20,000 square feet of the best units this building had. These are by far the best units you can have in the building. It is a southern orientation, the best views, they were up there. I showed it to my client, and it was hesitation, and after a while I said, man, this made a big difference, usually. But let's do it. What was the loss? So I gave the number and said, let's do it. Then we said, okay, we know the building we're asking for extra floor, can we do something about it? So we said, okay, actually we heard from staff again and said, what if you step the building back like 8 feet, and maybe along the east, west, and the north, the color. So we started to play again with our model, we did it. And really, when you start looking at the building at the ground level, you can't see it from these views, which I'm going to show you later. It really, unless you have more than 150 feet from the building, you see it as a 7-story building. This is not an 8-story building from that point. When you're really standing in the sidewalk walking. One more thing we did on this building was also, we had these balconies that everybody loved when we put it on the building. And we knew it was a little not quite there. They felt like they were not 100% integrated to the architecture of the building, but we felt, okay, we want to make this building more vertical, I think because there used to be continuous balconies here. We just break it. We realized when we're breaking it and creating these additional breaks in the building, it's starting to drive this building more vertical. And also creating this nice rhythm when you walk by the building. So all these little things that we've done, and there was additional small architectural elements, like we changed the cornices from a cast stone in contrast material to brick. So these little things still were helping little by little, changing the scale of this building. So I think these were changes, main changes, and this is another one that we're going to show in the next slide. What we did on Calhoun Street. There was another panel of these meetings. Can we read the building as three buildings, three facades on Calhoun Street? Can we create a deeper recesses and just start to read the building like three buildings rather than one long facade? So that's what we did. We did not eliminate units completely, but we eliminated half the size in order to create these two areas in here and really not created about 20 to 25 feet deep cuts into the building. So it really starts to reading like three separate facades. And also from this view, now you start seeing like, this is a 7-story building. You see a little bit of the 8th floor here, but that's it. This really starts to feel like a building that is much shorter. And because it's done in concrete also, this building doesn't have to be that tall because the floor heights are less when you do a concrete building, which we all mentioned last time. We want to build a really good quality concrete building that, lasts for a long time. We didn't want to do wood frame. And we can go much faster. So this is just another view showing the Calhoun facade with this kind of how you clearly see like three separate volumes of the building with deeper breaks. So these are just some elevation, some perspectives along Calhoun Street. This is going through building, and so again, we repeat basically the same articulation, some elements with the balconies on the side of the park. And again, just reading it again, it's a 7-story building really, because the 8th floor is setback so far back. And now what you start to see is the effect of the stepping of this building. So you really, if you look at the building, it starts with the volume that's just 5-story here really. Then it's about 10 feet back and it goes to 6 floors and go far back and goes to the 8 floors. But you see that how much of the volume was taken off the building and how much it reduced the scale a little bit of the building. But also starting to read this as a separate volumes here. And I think that was the real goal of helping, because everybody kind of liked what was happening in the south with the deep recess, deep courtyard, repeated in some form, not probably as we couldn't do it in the same scale on the north side, but at least as much as we could. And then just do something really with the east and west facades. And I thought it was pretty successful what we did. These are just some other ones, so you can see really again the scale and the stepping of the building. These are just repeated views a little bit. One more, please. And this is the same. This is kind of starting in the sidewalk on the Halsey side, on the other side of what you would see on the building. So really, you can't really see the 8th floor. There's a little bit of stepping, and again, from 5 to 6, and then go to 8 here, but really 7 visually because the 8th floor is so far back. And this is just to show that we wanted to address each side of this building in different way. And Halsey is really a residential street. So when you're walking by these 3-story balconies, now broken, so there's no this long elevation, they really create this feel of a 3-story volume that you walk by, which is almost the height of the townhouse. So when you feel, and the nice thing is the activation, because you can have people sitting here having a coffee, say hello, and it just feels safer that way. So that's why it was so important for us to maintain these units and home activation on this floor. So these are just really important to give you a feel. And we just put this diagram together and we showed the larger building down next to us in the medical district, and just wanted to see the scale actually. What's the rubber hospital, what the children's hospital looks like compared to our building in terms of just pure scale. And we tried to get as close as we could based on the heights we received from the civil plans and obviously the widths measuring in the Google. So these are this is a pretty accurate picture of the scales of surrounding buildings. And I would like to finish my presentation.
Thank you. Anyone additionally speaking on behalf of the applicant at this time?
No. There's public comment.
Oh, okay. Just one second, sir. Anyone else on behalf of the applicant? None at this time. Thank you. Ms. Paylor, you chose wisely. You still had 3 minutes left. We will now have public comment period. This is a reminder before we begin the public comment period that individual public comments are limited to 2 minutes unless extended by the chair. Each person needs to identify themselves by name as well as their address, and all comments should be limited to the purview of this board and no comments regarding zoning or livability such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, or other such non-germane concerns. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is John Van Heerden. I am not an architect. I'm not a builder. I'm not a businessman. Why then have I been asked to say a few words? Good question indeed. I am a professor of surgery at MUSC, Medical University of South Carolina, a lover of life and a lifelong foe of illness, cancer in particular. With your indulgence, and I was not aware of the 2-minute limit, so I'm in big trouble. You just cut me off when you want to. I would like to address 3 topics briefly. Tell you who I am, make some comments about the 295 building we've just seen, and tell you about a very special person. Firstly, about me. I am uneasy talking about myself. That's just who I am. I've always felt that it's much better to listen than to talk. I'd like to tell you there were a couple of snippets in my life story. I was born and educated in South Africa, and that's why I talk from it. And I did my postgraduate training at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Was invited to join the faculty at Rochester, where I spent 30 years as a busy general surgeon. Busy translates into operating on 25,000 patients in a 30-year period. An amazing and such a rewarding time it was. Each day was exciting. I often told our residents that I have never done a day's work in my life. Every day has just been fun. It felt like we were in a surgical cookie jar. We got to meet some amazing patients over those years, from whom we learned much. The Minnesota farmers were my most favorite patients, but it was thrilling to meet many patients from all walks of life in all parts of this world, like President and Mrs. Reagan, for whom we cared. I retired from the Mayo Clinic in an attempt to escape from the snow, moved to Charleston. 2 days after arriving in Charleston, I was recruited to the faculty in the Department of Surgery by Dr. Fred Crawford and our current president, Dr. David Cole, whom you all know well. I have been closely associated with the surgical department for almost 2 decades now, and have served as chair for education, vice chair of the Department of Surgery, and as an educator and a consultant. Most importantly, though, for the past year, I have served as an official baby rocker in the NICU, Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, in the Children's Hospital, which is without any doubt the highlight of my surgical career.
Dr. Von Huen, your initial 2-minute period has expired. I'm going to give you an additional 2 minutes, and if you could focus your comments on the applicant's presentation.
Okay. We need the proposed building, and strongly in favor of proceeding without undue delay. Have my own simplistic checklist, which I will not elaborate on since you know all the facts and the figures. Here is my checklist. Do we need more quality housing downtown? Check. Absolutely we do. We being the Medical University of South Carolina. As you know, the Medical University of South Carolina is not just for Charleston, but it's for the entire state of South Carolina. We have promised housing for those facilities throughout the state. We need quality housing. Secondly, the building is beautifully designed, as we just saw, and is very Charlestonian in appearance. I'm sure it will be copied by future MUSC buildings and sets a high bar for them to emulate. Are retail and restaurant capabilities beneficial to the downtown campus? Absolutely. Will the enclosed parking deck be beneficial to downtown congestion? Doubly checked, yes. Will improvements to the lake possibly, as we heard from our lawyer, help our flooding nightmares? Triple check. I'd like to end by saying, tell you a little bit about Mr. Vic Mills. I have three adages in life. In life, if it is not awfully simple, it is usually simply awful. Secondly, although it may be nice to be important, it's more important to be nice. Vic Mills qualifies on both accounts. I'm so blessed to count on him as a true friend. If you were to page through Webster's dictionary, you will see his name in parentheses after each of the following statements or words: true gentleman, reliable, expert in his field, lover of Charleston and the South, family man, humble. He will not tell you, so I shall. His peers, his architectural peers, recognize his mall at Shelter Cove on Hilton Head Island as the best community in South Carolina. That is a high honor for a man who knows his job.
Thank you, Dr. Von Hune. I've given you a total of about 5 minutes. Thank you for your remarks, particularly those germane to the building.
Thank you.
Further public comment on this agenda item? Approach. We have a whole line of people. If you want to queue up, that's fine as well. Mrs. Minigan.
Hello, my name is Erin Megan.
Justin Schweller.
And we're presenting a joint statement on behalf of both of our organizations, the Preservation Society of Charleston and the Historic Charleston Foundation. Due to our organization's shared commitment to serving as advocates for the preservation of Charleston's distinct architectural character and quality of life, we feel it's in the community's best interest for us to join forces and speak with a unified voice on this issue so there's no daylight between our positions. We are strongly opposed to this proposal. Last time 295 Hilton was before the BAR, the board was very clear that this design needed a completely fresh approach, and that this site that is highly visible from all angles and serves as a gateway to Charleston deserves a strong, well thought out design, yet we see no meaningful change. To return to the BAR with a proposal of essentially the same design after receiving 2 outright denials and forcing the city through a lengthy and expensive litigation process is a highly irresponsible move by this developer that is draining city resources. Further, it seems that this developer has no intention of working with the public to build something meaningful for Charleston. From personal experience and through conversations with residents, we understand the developer is not interested in responding to community feedback, having reached out only 2 weeks ahead of tonight's meeting after radio silence for more than a year.
So for a third time, we stand before you to oppose the design that has had no meaningful change since it first appeared in early 2021. This board has consistently and correctly rejected this design on grounds of inappropriate height, scale, mass, and architectural direction. By repeatedly presenting the same unchanged proposal, the applicant is attempting to bulldoze the integrity of the BAR process, effectively ignoring the board's prior motions. Again, we see a building that is at odds with Charleston's character and makes no attempt to respond to the site or context, especially for a site that is officially located within the Charleston Village neighborhood. The adopted BAR principles dictate that new construction should present narrow frontages to the street, have articulation and material detailing at a human scale, be in harmony with the surrounding structures, and reinforce Charleston's visual character. We challenge you to find how this design meets any of these principles. Therefore, the proposal is nowhere near the threshold of deserving conceptual approval, and it is certainly not deserving of the approval for extra height for architectural merit and context. This building is wrong for the site, it is wrong for Charleston. We urge the board not to fixate on details and deliberate over the design, but be very specific to create an ironclad motion for denial based on height, scale, mass, and architectural direction. There are 7 pages of public comment against this development. This is not just the preservation groups being obstructionists. This is the city speaking out against incompatible development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Milligan and Mr. Schwebler. Further public comment on this agenda item?
All right, Scott, go ahead.
James Doyle, Vice President, Radcliffe Neighborhood Association. I'm speaking for the Neighborhood Association. We are the northern neighbors. Our southern boundary is on Calhoun Street, not quite across the street from 295, but pretty close. We support both preservation and the historic Charleston's position.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Further public comment on this agenda item?
Scott Anthony, Charleston Village. As probably many of y'all know, our opposition to this project originally pretty public. You know, we made a statement in the public courier about it. We have actually met with developers. We understand the limitations that our neighborhood is facing in the sense of our objections to this. It's our understanding that they are approved for 7 floors. It would just be a matter, of design and detail. That being said, we have asked them to break up the facade, which in a lot of ways they have done. We have asked them to stagger it off of Long Lake, which in a lot of ways they have done. We have been in close communication with Halsey Park, the neighborhood next door, probably the most affected of the residents in our neighborhood. They are in support of this project. Although it's not the purview necessarily tonight, a lot of the things that have been discussed are a lot of the reasons why we support it. First and foremost being that we're limited in the scale of building that's ultimately going to go on that location. We're clear that a large building is going to go there. However, what we believe to be Mr. Mills and everyone else's commitment to fixing the surrounding area, boardwalk, making that an actual amenity for the whole neighborhood, not some private enclave for the residents. Concerns we have with transportation and location of residency for MUSC. We believe all things considered that they have refined it. As such, we are reluctantly supporting the application tonight based on those parameters. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment?
Hi, my name is David Cooper. I live at 66 Gadsden Street. I'm approximately 200 yards from this project, and I'll probably be the second most affected homeowner in this development. Contrary to what you've heard tonight, I'm here tonight to express my support for the 295 project. The developer's been very open and gracious in reaching out to the surrounding neighborhood and those of us who will be most affected by this project. They've gone out of their way to meet with us, share information on everything from the design to how it might impact flooding to what the public improvements might be. We appreciate the fact that they've reached out to us and been very open and receptive to our input and concerns. In fact, the most recent design incorporates several changes to the exterior that was represented to them by a group of neighbors they recently met with. So they've been nothing but demonstrating that they are going to be a good neighbor and one that listens. When looking at the project as a whole, I know it's your job to look at the design, but it appears short-sighted, solely focused on the design, given some of the many amenities and attributes that the project will bring to the neighborhood. A linear park that will no doubt contribute to the pedestrian flow around the project. The trail and landscaping around the current Alberta Long Lake will be a significant addition to the neighborhood. And the modifications to the lake level, will represent a significant step forward in terms of mitigating the flooding in the area, which is chronic. So when considering all the attributes, many of us think this will be a win for the neighborhood and one that we very much look forward to its completion. Contrary to what you've heard, I think the architecture is appropriate and attractive. Of course, that's a subjective term, but you don't have to look far from this intersection to find buildings that most of us, or most people would agree, aren't that attractive. The Roper Hospital, the Ashley Tower Apartments, the old abandoned Bank of America building on the corner of Calhoun and Gas and the Rutledge Tower. I think by any objective measure, the project should be viewed as a significant visual enhancement to the intersection and the area as a whole. Regarding the size and scale, I find it hard to reconcile those arguments given some of the buildings that were just, you see before you right there. So I don't think they carry as much weight. So I hope you can find your way to approval of this process, with this development. I think it's reasonable to expect after a year and a half, with some odd changes, that BAR can find a way to come to an agreement with the developer, any developer for that matter. You've done your job. I think the project is in a lot better shape now than when we started. You should be commended for that. But at some point, the process has to come to a conclusion. We don't want this to go down the path that the Jasper development went down. I don't think any of us will win in that scenario. This is a well-intentioned, well-respected developer who's willing to invest a significant amount of money in our community, and I think they've proven in their actions and flexibility over the last year and a half, they're worthy of our support and approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Further public comment on this?
Good afternoon. My name is John Williams. I live in Ashley, Florence. I am the owner and operator of the Royal Turn on Johns Island. Southeastern developed our building out there. We have received nothing but positive feedback on that building. Lots of comments on the architecture, the design. They worked with the county out there as well to get it everything the way that they needed it. When they approached me recently about possibly being one of the retail / restaurants in the bottom of the building, we took a look at the project. We felt that it was something that followed along with our brand. We want to be in a architecturally pleasing building. We love the view of the lake. We think that this would be a great spot for us to possibly do our second location, and would be really excited to be a part of the project if this was.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Further public comment?
Good afternoon. My name is James Ward. I live at 45 Sycamore, West Ashley, longtime resident of downtown, however, former president of Musique Rackville myself. I come basically what amounts to in support of the project. I want to commend the architects and the planners for doing some fundamentals that I think needed to have been done in a lot of projects before. They've shown you perspectives from places where people actually are and not a pigeon perspective. They've shown a sensibility about the overall site and weaving it in with the site and making it part of the city with the way they've expressed the recreation behind it and the various uses. I think all that's for the good. There are a couple of elements that I feel like still could use some refinement, the level of detail, especially from the pedestrian level view, so that we get that sense of it. We have a little bit of that in the sort of landscape panoramas that they've given along the street, but I think more detail is in order so that it sort of can join the character of the street. Also, perhaps it would be worthwhile to be looking at street sections, looking at that so we can judge the size and space and the design of the streetscape, which is in effect created by the building. And that, I think, should be within the purview of the BAR in looking at that. It's no more than what Mario Ciappa had us do when we were looking at the streetscapes on King Street around Charleston Place. So that's basically my comment, is just looking for further refinements that we can look at. I think conceptually it works pretty well. I understand the reluctance of the preservation community in looking at it because it's very different from what we're used to, but the limitations the board has because of zoning is pretty profound. And I would suggest that perhaps those arguments against this be taken to City Council and to the zoning so that it can be addressed more directly. Thank you for your.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Further public comment?
Thank you. My name is Chris McCool. I live at 16 Bennett Street. I realize I'm woefully underdressed, but I think my attire speaks volumes as to the importance of me being here. And that is, I want to echo the comments of the gentleman in the striped shirt. Being in close proximity to the project, 100% in favor of it. My wife and I, we have raised 2 children in Charleston Village. In college, or out of college. We've actually gone over this with them. They're excited for it, just like us. The vast majority of the neighbors that we've been in touch with in favor of it, we haven't actually come across one that is against it. We have talked about it. We are in favor of it. What I appreciate from a personal level is the 8-story model. Because of the linear parts, and it's just friendlier, so to speak, to the neighborhood. And again, I think it's a win. I think it's a great project, and I hope it goes forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCool. Further public comment?
Good afternoon. My name is Charlie Carmody. I live at 107 New Street. This is clearly not the same project we looked at the first time. It's a much better project. He's done the setbacks. He's pushed the 8th floor back. He's pushed it away from the street. They've done a lot of work here. And I think what we have in front of us tonight should get approval because it is in height, scale, and mass situated where it is. I mean, look at that picture. It fits well right there. It's a great design project, and I ask for your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmy. Further public comment on this agenda item? Going once, going twice. City staff comments or recommendations?
So, Mr. Chairman, before we do
Yes, sir.
can we go back
Question
and,
from Mr. Menders.
a couple of questions I have?
Of course, that's entirely appropriate. Of the questions of the applicant.
Yes.
Okay.
So, Lawrence, if you go to page 33.
Take your time. Is that which one, James?
Yes. So I wanted to just confirm with you. The first floor setback is 10 feet on the south side.
Yes.
Immediately, the living floors immediately above, it looks like it's about 2 feet. Is that right? There's an overhang of those immediate floors, so it's about.
There is the overhang is roughly, it's about probably maybe 17, 18 feet, the overhang.
So let me just look at that with you.
Sure.
So I've just had knee surgery.
That's okay. Yeah, we can have that screen. This overhang is about 7 to 18 feet. So this is the top. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, yeah. I thought you meant height.
Lawrence, page 29. And just looking for a confirmation on this, is this west alley, is this on page 29 it's called a park. On 30 it's called the fire truck vehicle access. So the west alley.
Well,
And so
it is a park, but I mean, so it will be designed as a park. It's going to have the paving and the green area. But in case of fire, it can be sort of a small section of it. I think about 120 feet into the bound can be potentially access. We don't know yet whether we need that yet, but I think we potentially there was not finalized. But it can potentially be used. But it will be designed as a green space. The only thing you can put like a benches or something that would protect from the fire truck to go in. But you would never tell that it's a fire.
Right, I just was interested in.
Yeah,
It was called out as two.
Yeah, it's still not certain whether we actually need it because this is now the high-rise building, concrete building, and doesn't need actually that much access because it's actually the way it's designed. All the fire protection is inside the building compared to the low-rise building. Because this is now a high-rise building, so I don't think we would need that, but we did put it in just in case.
Thank you. And, just a question in general. The HVAC equipment, well, I don't anticipate that it'd be drawn now. Do you anticipate that it would be on the roof?
Yes.
Do you anticipate that it would be visible? If we were to look at some of the elevations from.
Yeah, we did have actually exhibit when we had a roof plan of the building. We set it back about 20 feet away from the edge of the building. And it depends what kind of equipment. Usually these are between 4 to 5 feet tall, usually units. But we haven't finalized the mechanical system. But you expect to be about 4 to 5 feet with some screen walls. And then potentially can be some overruns for like elevators and things which are also high. But there would be setbacks significantly, like probably 4 to 1 or 5 to 1 from the edge of the building. So there's no way to see them unless you are 500 feet away.
Thank you.
Ms. Wheeler.
Yes, I have some questions as well. If you could go to page 13. I studied the floor plans and the perspectives, and there seems to be some misconnect. So I want to get some clarification. Page 13. You see here the projecting glass bay, which looks like, I think on one floor plan it shows to be a 12-foot deep glass bay or something like that, 10 to 12 feet. And then there's there's a brick wall that's continuous from the first to the sixth floor, or second to the sixth floor. If you go to page 37 and 38, so first 37, that's the fifth floor plan. You see this little balcony there? This looks like, when I measured it, like a 5-foot recess. And then when you go to the next page, there's a 12-foot recess here of that bay, and this is the first step that you're doing here.
Yeah, the 5 floors are typical, 6th floor is unique, it's already set back.
So the perspective shows just one continuous recess there, but the floor plans show 2 different recesses. What is it? What should we consider? This to me looks like it's the brick wall that was continuous from the second floor up. If you go back to page 37, one page back, this wall here is just half the size. It's just about 6 feet, I think, pushed back.
That floor, the top floor will be recessed back 12 feet. It needs to be a nice balcony there.
So
Yeah.
this
Actually, probably, yeah, that balcony on this maybe detail is probably shown on this. It's about a 12-foot balcony. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is not correct. This
It needs to be slightly tweaked there in that corner.
Okay. Then I found another disconnect, which is concerning the eighth floor recess. So if you go to page 11, 12, and I know you studied the recess based on staff comments extensively. So I'm looking at this 8th floor recess here, right? This is the 8th floor. Can't see it from this perspective here very much, but I can see it here, and this is kind of in line with the balcony here.
Yeah,
so it's a significant setback.
Oh yeah, it is
but,
probably
well,
about 30
not
feet.
significant, but it is a setback from the 6th story. But then when you go to the floor plan, which is again, I think, page 39, that 8th floor is much further pushed out, so it looks like it's 13 or 14 foot further pushed out from what I measured from the drawings. So this one here, this is not aligned with the balcony that was on the floor below.
Oh,
So which then?
This is pretty far set back.
It's not what the rendering shows, though.
Well, it's within a probably foot or two. I mean, it's not more than that.
So have you developed the floor plan separately from the rendering?
Yeah. These are right now. These are conceptual floor plans. We did not. This is not like a random model that is 100% connected. If there is a, I don't know, maybe I think it's exact. I don't think it. I think that model more or less matches exactly what's shown in this plan. And if it doesn't, we can happily follow the 3D model. But I think those are pretty much very close match to each other.
Yeah, I don't think it does, but I'm just confused. Which drawings should we look at when we review this, or when we judge this presentation? Should we look at the renderings or the floor
We
plans?
actually have also submitted the floor plans that have the exact dimension.
Yeah, I have them here in front of
Yes.
me, and
So-
again, it doesn't align with the renderings. And the renderings is what we look at to judge the massing mostly.
Yeah, the renderings are pretty accurate. I mean, these are not 100% exact models. These are conceptual models, but they are within a foot or two of all of them. Except I agree that probably the balcony in one floor was showing slightly less than one floor than on the other. I agree with that.
Typically, I think the BIR requires that floor plans, elevations, and renderings need to match, because
Oh, yeah,
otherwise, these are binding documents that we will
Right.
approve or defer. So we can't just approve a couple of pages of the document.
No, I 100% understand, but these things were still developed in a conceptual level. So these are not the final floor plans, obviously. I know this is a 3-step approval process, so we are in the first step really when we trying to, find out really if we really have a building, really, quite frankly, because we've been working on it for so long.
I understand, and the 8th floor is pretty sensitive, and I studied so we're looking at the exact recesses here, how far is it pushed back from the facade, and it's very sensitive. But thank you.
Any further questions from the board before we move to city staff comments or recommendations?
I'm going to make an observation. While there are some similarities in materials and perhaps even in the general perception of overall massing, staff has worked extensively with the applicant to adjust materials and to modulate the massing to an 8-story form along Calhoun Street, transitioning down to 6-story massing and lower forms along Alberta Long Lake and the edge across the village, while additionally breaking up the massing vertically with hyphens and other design elements. While still a large building, which is not inappropriate to the context of the medical district, its massing has been adjusted with treatment vertically and horizontally. And then we have 3 comments. Number 1, at the east and west elevations, reduce the length of the units closer to the exterior at the 7th floor at the south, which have been extended. The length of these as proposed weakens the transition and diminishes the articulation as a step between the 6 and 8-story portions. This is evident on page 13, if needed for reference. 2, as the massing on Calhoun Street, with the exception of the chamfered corner, is symmetrical, consider adjusting the eastern third of the Calhoun facade so as to make the openings mirror the western third. The chamfered corner to be what breaks the symmetry instead of a change in the pattern. And 3, continue study of the top of the 7th floor at the chamfered corner, because this is the entry to the lobby of the building, and it is the element that breaks the overall symmetry of the massing. Consider how it might deserve and have some additional hierarchy. And the staff's recommendation: with the achievement of staff comment number 1, the development team will have completed required revisions set forth in July 2021 to achieve staff support of conceptual approval. Therefore, staff recommends conceptual approval with staff and board comments.
Thank you, Mrs. Parrish. The applicant has the opportunity to use up to a 5-minute period to respond or rebut to either public comment or city staff comments or recommendations if they so choose.
I just want to respond to the historic Charleston and preservation comment that this is inappropriate height, scale, and mass. When the only principle that they mentioned was a narrow frontage to the street. This is zoned for a building, not for a residence. What they are concerned about, and I believe it's mentioned by several people, is the zoning. And that's really not words of the day. And so I would ask that they really didn't come up with any principle that was violated with any, and you have to come up with some specific area. Height, scale, and mass in this context is the zone. They have broken it up as much as they can, and staff recommends approval, and we hope you will approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Payne. All right, we now move to board discussion and a potential vote on this agenda item.
So I have a question.
Sure.
For Tori or our legal counsel.
Well, if we have a question for legal counsel, of course, we'll go into executive session.
I just say, Tori's recommendation where the development team is here. The achievement of staff comment number 1, the development team will have completed the required revisions set forth in July 2021, which is what happened in July 2020?
So there was a letter that we sent in July of 2021 that outlined 9 items, of which we felt like the development team needed to do, and if they could do those things, we could support a conceptual approval. And there was one item that was a lot harder to achieve, and that related to that stepping down and changing the massing to be sort of an 8 down to a 6. And so I don't have the letter with me, but
I thought that was the case. I just wanted to make sure that was the case. But it's based on the this is the results.
No, that was not based on the mediation. That was based on, that actually occurred in July, was between the last 2 meetings. So the first meeting, I think, was February 21, second one, August 21. And so this was a letter that staff did as our recommendations, a lot of it taken from, what we heard at the first board meeting as well.
I thought
And
that
what
was
we
the
felt.
case again. I'm just trying to.
Yeah. It's been a while.
Over a year.
So, Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
No, that's it. I was just saying, it's been more than a year. We could all use a refresher. Of course.
Okay, so I appreciate the setbacks, which are greater than required. I don't understand the proportions of the balconies or porches that extend beyond the face of the buildings on the east and west elevations. Both the east and west elevations, as I view them, and my description for this meeting is that they feel boxy and essentially flat. And I believe it will read very massive when it is built. Lawrence, if you could go to page 10. So at the top of the cast stone cornice, the base of the window above dissects the cornice. And this breaks the continuity of the cast stone. And the area that I'm talking about specifically that interrupts a run for me as I see it is here. When I look at the precedent images used in the presentation, some of which are adjacent to the structure that you can see from this structure and some are not, I see some of the finest architecture in the city. And I struggle to make the transition from the precedent buildings and the details that have been identified and the proposed plan. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Measures. Further board comment on this agenda item?
I have one question regarding the staff, regarding staff comment number 1. Can you explain what you mean by that the units have been extended versus what was discussed at one point, just to understand what your condition really is for your.
Sure. So one of the things we've been talking about is that transitional element of the step down. And so we feel like this has been extended too far. And we've got 8, 7, 6. If this were pulled back and it created more of a step, that would be a bit more successful.
Sure.
We actually did look at it already, and we prepared those floor plans, and it would work for the building, and we actually also have a rendering.
That's that. Further board comments?
Then I'll
Yes.
start with my comments. First, I think the applicant that you reached out to the Charleston neighborhood, very important to continue that communication. And looking at the history of this project, came once in front of the board in April and was denied. Then it came back, you made some changes. The board thought that the massing was not quite, that it didn't make enough changes, so it was denied again. So in fairness to the applicant, I think we should really look at this application and compare it to the very initial one and see if enough changes have been made. And so if I do that, I do see changes to the massing that were requested to height scalar mass. I see the 8th floor setback if you go to the Calhoun Street elevation. 8th floor pushback, which is 8 foot, and it's significant. You incorporated the recesses you described that are actually meaningful. So that's a positive. I think in general, the overall massing, it was always good to have that recessed courtyard on the lakeside that stayed. That's good. And now I see a articulation on the lakeside from a 5-story glass bay step up to a 6-story and then further back the 7 and 8 story. Now, I don't think that the 7th and 8th story setback is enough. See it from here, you picked some angles relatively close to the building where you don't see the eighth floor that much, but if you go back to another page, from page 13, you're a little bit further away, you do see the eighth floor now. You don't have the benefit with this building to be downtown, surrounded by a lot of buildings. You have the view that is a benefit for you, but in terms of you have the lake. But when you walk around the lake, you will see the eighth floor completely. So I think it needs to be pushed back further. Also, if you look at coming from Calhoun Street, I think it's page 25. You'll see that coming from that elevation, you completely see the eighth floor. This is the end of the building, and this is where the eighth floor is. So we have a lot of vistas around this property, and this needs to be addressed appropriately, I think. Now, any other, in terms of scale, I think you did a lot to the building. The east and west elevation has a much better composition. Basically, what you described, you cleaned up those 2 and 3 story projecting balconies that I actually think will work. Architectural language, that was the general architectural direction that you were supposed to restudy. I see a couple of positives there compared to the initial presentation. You simplified that brick corners. You eliminated some of the decorative cast stone bands that were just too elaborate and did not need to be there. So I think generally the simplification has happened and was positive. The stone base has been cleaned up a little bit, but I still see, you're asking for architectural merit. I still see an interruption here. You have a stone base and then it's interrupted here, stone base interrupted here. So this, I think, was a staff comment and should be continuous around the entire building. So I think the general architectural direction is not quite there. There's still some awkward transition that James has mentioned earlier. If you go to page 20, the corner entry that has been studied and is better, but there are elements here where the corners again is dying into a mullion of a window. These are details that are not in harmony with the surrounding buildings. That's not something that you would see anywhere in Charleston, and it's discomforting. And if you wouldn't ask for the architectural merit, we wouldn't really look at these details yet. But if we need to consider giving you an extra story, we need to look at the details and see if it's an exemplary design. And these details need to be cleaned up and need to be in harmony with the prevailing character of Charleston. So I do see a lot of positives, but I think it's not quite there. I think the massing is almost there, but the eighth floor needs to be pushed back further. And the architectural direction there needs to be some of those details that are very concerning to be cleaned up. And then I do have an issue with voting on a submittal that where the floor plans do not match the elevations. These are binding documents, so we would seen too many times that although this is a conceptual level, that the applicant comes back at a preliminary level with exactly the same floor plan, and what do we do then? Then height, scale, and mass is approved, and then we would need to go back and adjust the scale or the mass again.
Thank you, Mrs. Weaver. Further board comment?
First, I appreciate how articulate my colleagues are, so thank you for sharing all of your thoughts. I'm not quite as articulate, so I wrote down what I was going to say. First, thank you all for presenting the information today. it's certainly incredibly informative. So thank you. As many has reminded us earlier, the charge of this board is to consider, among other things, the general design, character, and appropriateness of the design, the height, the scale, and the mass of the structure, and its relation to such aspects and features to its immediate surroundings. After listening to today's presentation, and in reviewing the site plans and the renderings of the project, and further considering the public input and that has been recorded both electronically and in person, I find that this project has not met the appropriate threshold to be considered for conceptual approval. Item 3 of the Charleston vision developed from the 2008 Charleston Preservation Plan states that Charleston will look like Charleston, with recognition that the city's eras of development each have a distinct and valuable character, which collectively represent the continuity of the city's rich history. This property serves as a gateway to the city. It can be home to a structure that is a neighbor to Charleston Village, an enrichment to its natural surroundings, and a grand example of the general character of Charleston. In short, it can be authentically Charleston, respecting the Charleston of yesterday, complementary to the Charleston of today, and the quality to be appreciated by the Charleston of tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Further board comments? I will say that the applicant has come a long way on this project, and I think Ms. Wheeler's observation is appropriate that you do have to consider where we started from this project. And I think with some very specific site constraints, the applicant has attempted to break up the massing again with some significant limitations. I think that we're wise to consider the applicant's reference to the adjacent buildings, because we continue to have this conflict between whether this is a building that should be treated as being in the medical district or being a part of Charleston Village or somehow both. And it is in fact in a transition area between the two. It's hard to make 2- and 3-story residential congruous with large skyscrapers that are only a few hundred yards away. So I understand and appreciate the architect's attempt to compromise between those issues. I share Ms. Wheeler's concern that whether it was by accident, mistake, just being overlooked, that there's some incongruity between the floor plans that we have and the site renderings that we have. And of course, we rely on those to a great extent for conceptual approval. I'll also second Ms. Wheeler's comment about the banding of the base of the building and being consistent across the facades to the extent possible, which also reflects Ms. Parrish's concern in comment number 1 from city staff. Further board comments and recommendations?
Mr. Chairman, Tori Lawrence, I need some help with Carol's identification of consistency between what we see in the floor plans and what we see in the elevations. I just don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Would it be appropriate to go into an executive session to discuss with council?
Maybe we try to.
We can see what staff can speak to.
I mean, I think that's a fine idea, and I would just say, I think there's, I feel some partial responsibility that, those things are, once we sit down to comb through them and get to them, the ball is far rolling into the meeting. But I think what your choice is then to, take an action to delay, or you need to be very specific about your comments are related to the perspectives. Your comments are related to the floor plans. And you need to nail that down when you make your,
How do you feel about that?
I'd like to look at page 6 again in that elevation east elevation. You know, what I would think is, I do think the 8th story is appropriate on Calhoun Street. It's directly across the street from the medical district. I think it needs to step down, but what I would want to see is that to make it a meaningful step, and that was the concept that the applicant has expressed. The 8th story needs to stop here, the way it was shown in this elevation, and then this, the elevation that you would still see from further away has been almost grayed out, but the 8th floor needs to stop here, and the 7th floor needs to be adjusted per the comment from this parish. I think architectural merit-wise, we need to decide if that project meets the standards. And I think the public realm improvements, I definitely check those boxes. You check those boxes. Exemplary design, it improved a lot, but those details that we pointed out, are we comfortable that those will be addressed in the next round or not? Or do we need to see this change? Do we need to see the change where the 8th floor is pushed back further and the 7th floor is pushed back further, the way city staff had recommended that and in their letter from July last year?
In which the applicant says they have renderings forward showing that further pushback, or at least that was my understanding.
Those comments that we received on Friday.
So I have actually shared. Yes, Mr. Mathers.
I would make a motion for deferral of this application with board staff comments. And I do not support, as of now, the 8th floor for architectural.
To be crystal clear though, even though you've made that comment, your motion is for a deferral incorporating board and staff comments. Correct. Right. Is there a second to that motion? Motion fails for lack of a second. Is there another motion?
I have a question, James. So you do see if the board and staff comments are being addressed, you would see a road towards the 8th floor architectural merit.
I did not intend for that to be the case. I intended for there not to be an 8th floor, so I may have misstated that.
Well, again, you've made your comment, but your motion is for a deferral incorporating board and staff comments. Am I correct? Having addressed Ms. Wheeler's concern, would you like to restate your motion? That's okay. Is there?
Well, I mean, I'll restate the motion. I'll make a motion for deferral of the application and also incorporate the elimination of the 8th floor for architectural merit.
So your motion is for deferral incorporating board and staff comments, but a denial as to an 8th floor?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Motion fails for lack of a second. Is there any other motion on the floor from amendment?
I would motion to deny the proposal as presented.
With any other qualifications incorporating board and staff comments?
With board and staff comments.
Okay, so your motion is for a denial of the presentation incorporating board and staff comments.
Yes, sir.
Have you stated that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second? Fails for lack of a second. Is there another motion?
I'll make a motion for deferral with a request to incorporate staff comment number 1 and study number 2 and 3, and to further step back the 8th and 7th floor per board discussion. Study architectural details, achieve architectural merit, provide matching floor plans and elevations.
Ms. Wheeler, your motion, as I understand it, was a motion for deferral, incorporating staff comment number 1 for a study of staff comments 2 and 3, for a step back of the 8th floor, to study the architectural details to achieve architectural merit, to achieve architectural merit, and to require matching floor plans and elevations.
Just one change to that, the step back of the 8th floor per board discussion.
Stepping of the 8th floor for board.
Per board discussion.
Per board discussion. Study architectural details to achieve architectural merit and requirement for matching floor plans and elevations. If I correctly restated your method. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? I'm going to call for an executive session. We've had, so that the public doesn't think there's any intrigue involved, we've had 3 failed motions on this agenda item, and refreshing myself on the rules. 4. Refreshing myself on the rules, since we don't have this much of an impasse, I'm going to take a minute to look at the rules with council regarding an impasse on any given agenda item. So we will adjourn what I hope is briefly. Yes?
You need to make a motion, get a second, to go into executive.
Oh, I will, but I wanted to explain for the benefit of the public what we were doing and why, so that they didn't think there was any subterfuge. Regarding making sure we move forward procedurally if in fact we have a deadline. So I would entertain a motion to move into executive session, during which the public should feel free to adjourn to use the restroom, and we'll get back as quickly as possible. Mr. Metters has moved for executive session for legal advice. Mr. Brown seconded. We'll adjourn briefly for that. Thank you.
All right, sir. Good to see you. Yes, sir. Much improved. Right.
This meeting is always more.
We appreciate it much, sir. That's why I was just that's consistency that gets from us. Well, I've had plenty of people come here with us to get identified, and they come back with me. That's right. It's very similar to what's in Iowa. So when they have that
That's not really the standard. Yeah, a lot of them don't think the board is up there.
Well, Mr. Mills during the first meeting, when you first met with us, he was with us.
Right.
As an attorney, I'm just like, man, because I think about that's happening. That's like some kind of discussion. You're like, oh, no. So I just thought it wasn't. I sent a letter to them one time in private Oregon County. Our position was never I put up a incredibly letter saying she called me for it. You're opposing the project, right? Yes. So when your very first sentence, we urge you to approve. I forgot to put when the whole 2-page letter was adamantly against the project. I was sitting there laughing. I was not sorry because she knew what she knew. I was against it. It was so sad. Hold on over so much. No, it's not. Great. So she was. That's why. We got a lot of it. That's the affirmative. I understand. I know the
Most of the meeting debating over 11% footprint. I don't
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that was and like I said,
Thank you for coming out.
We have one member of city staff who will be back with us momentarily, and then we will reconvene formally. Feel free to talk to whatever till then. Sure.
On 25.
Yeah, of course. It's kind of random. Are y'all good? Yes. Okay, okay. Y'all good business. Okay. But still, it's kind of random. Sorry. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. This time I'd like to entertain a motion for us to formally leave executive session. And a second. Second. Thank you, Mr. Brown. We are out of executive session. You okay, Mrs. Payne?
I couldn't hear.
Okay, I apologize. We just formally moved out of executive session. Okay. Very good. We are now back on the floor with agenda item number 2, which has had 4 motions in relation to it after taking counsel related to specific procedural issues on the agenda items. We're now back in discussion and a possible vote on this agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to once again make a motion to deny the project with board and staff comment. Deny conceptual approval for boards and with board and staff comment.
Mr. Brown, your motion is to deny the applicant's presentation, incorporating board and staff comments?
Yes, sir.
Restated that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second for Mr. Metters, so I'll proceed to call the roll. Ms. Wheeler, how do you vote?
Nay, not in favor.
Mr. Brown?
Yea, in favor.
Mr. Metters? And myself, nay, not in favor. So this motion fails for a tie, 2-2. Is there another motion?
I can try again. Right, I'll make a motion for deferral to incorporate staff comment number 1 and study number 2 and 3 to step back the 8th floor for board discussion. To revise architectural details per board comments to achieve architectural merit and to provide matching floor plans and elevations.
Mrs. Wheeler, your motion, as I understand it, is for a deferral, incorporating staff comment number 1, study staff comments 2 and 3, step back on the 8th floor per board discussion to revise architectural details to achieve architectural merit and to require the applicant to provide matching floor plans and elevations. Is that a correct statement?
That's
of your
correct.
motion? I will second that motion. And having the motion in a second, I will call down the roll. Ms. Wheeler, how do you vote?
Yea, in favor.
Mr. Brown?
Nay, not in favor.
Mr. Metters? And myself, yea, in favor. So it's 2-2 again.
So I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Make a motion for referral of the application with board and staff comments, but it does not include the 8th floor for architectural merit.
Okay, so Mr. Metters, your motion is for deferral, incorporating board and staff comments, but a denial of an 8th floor for lack of architectural merit. Correct. Is that a correct statement of your motion? That's correct. Is there a second? I'll second it. Having motion and second, we'll proceed down the roll. Ms. Wheeler?
Can you repeat that motion?
The motion was for deferral, incorporating board and staff comments, and with a denial as to the 8th floor for lack of architectural merit.
Nay, not in favor.
Mr. Brown,
Nay, not in favor.
Mr. Meadows, and myself, yay in favor. So that fails as well, 2-2.
So, let me see what the difference between your two last motions would be and if you would find some consensus. You had a deferral with some board and staff comments and a denial of the 8th floor, and you have a flat out denial.
You're looking only for a setback on 17.
Well, no, it's more a denial. Usually you would need to quote the reason for the denial. So I wonder if both of your reasons are the same. What is Mr. Brown's reasons for deferral or denial? You would request a complete 9.
That's a yes, Mr. Brown?
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to get to the point where this has architectural merit.
This iteration of this project.
That's correct.
In that regard, you're saying architectural merit warranting the addition of an 8th floor.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And my comments stands. I studied it, so sitting here tonight, I'm not willing to. I'm prepared, and so I stand by my comments. So, as you do and should.
Yeah. And I have to say, we've seen other projects come in front of the board requesting architectural merit, and the project is not quite up to par with those projects. I agree with that. But I think that the changes that have been incorporating, particularly on the massing, which was quoted in the last, and that when you look at the board comments from the last meeting, everybody's talking about the massing, the transition, and that the massing is really the problem. And a couple of board members thought that an 8th floor would be warranted on Columbia Street. Again, that the massing and the architectural direction is not quite there yet. So I do think that the massing would be achieved if the 8th floor is pushed back to make a meaningful step down, if the 7th floor is pushed back further, and the general architectural direction has been cleaned up. The details that I see and some of the inconsistency of the use of stone or cast stone in this case does not warrant the architectural merit yet. I believe there could be a way to get there.
I do too.
During the presentation, there was a discussion about the improved offsets on the south side of the building, which was correct. But then, it's also stated that on the east side, west side, you just can't do the same thing. But those sides are highly visible. There's just not much offset on the east side as you're going down Halsey Street. There's just not much offset on that. In the brick planes, you can see small shadow lines, but when I looked at it on the plans, those offsets just aren't very great. I realize that cuts into your square footage. I get it, but we're not. So, that offset is what gives that
Do you think that if those hyphens that have been expressed, if they would be further, that would get the applicant?
I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying what my thoughts are based on what I'm seeing on the screen.
Do you think that the step down helps with the former boxiness that was supposed to be further articulated? So the initial floor plan, the initial project had an 8-story mass, and it was 8 stories on all sides except for the lake side. There was a tiny step back. So I think that has improved, and that would, when you look down Halsey, first of all, the fact that they pushed the facade back and you have the triangular part, I think it does help.
So I the transition from what came originally to now, I mean, there's noticeable change, there's no question about it. It's just is it noticeable, is it enough? For the inside.
I understand.
Yeah, no.
And I appreciate it. You did give some context for that, additional context for those remarks. Further board discussion.
It seems like we need an uneven number of members.
We suggest if this is okay with the board, you can move to table this item to the next meeting, so that we can have an uneven number of members, hopefully, and potentially allow the applicant to address the comments that have been raised tonight as well.
That's fine. I was trying to get a motion to move it forward one way or another. But in the absence of that, in the studied, deliberate, and thoughtful remarks of my colleagues on the board, I would entertain a motion to table this agenda item until our next break.
That all sounds great, but I want to make sure that the applicant takes the basic direction back about the identification of floor plans and elevations matching. When we come back that these things are together. So if that's not done at the next application, I think that would not be acceptable. So please make sure that those are matching.
Well, and right now, procedurally, we are just tabling this agenda item. So it would behoove an applicant, obviously, to incorporate and absorb comments, but that's not part of a formal motion to defer on the merits.
Motion to table.
Mr. Metters has made a motion to table this agenda item. Is there a second?
1 second.
I'll go down the roll. Ms. Wheeler votes in favor.
Yea in favor.
Mr. Brown?
Yea in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Yea in favor.
And myself, yea in favor. So we'll take a brief recess while those members of the public on this agenda item have opportunity. Sure.
Yes, thank you.
Hello.
Well,
They're gonna watch the video. Sure. It's going to be the same application, and that's why I caution that the tabling is a procedural remedy. It has no substance and no merit. They can choose to Yeah, but what, I don't want to read on this one again until we got it on. I did not, I did not, I had taken Eddie's silence as consent. It's okay. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I mean, I appreciate your patience, but I was trying to procedurally work it every way I could. Yes.
Thank you.
It's very odd.
Yeah, we can see it. I mean, we can see it in 2 weeks.
I understand it's conceptual.
Given the unique circumstances of this file, I would not object if they supplemented their application with conforming material.
This is clarifying their anomaly today.
Right.
It's just a click and comment.
No, it's not. And we've had that, to be clear, we've had this problem more and more. And I don't know if it's because people are rushed, or in this case, we're talking about 2 different projects, but we've seen it more and more.
Thanks for making it interesting. All right, y'all carry on.
All right.
And that's well on.
Okay, we have our board members and staff present. We will resume the meeting. Agenda item number 3 was deferred at the request of the applicant. Parrish, when you're ready, we have agenda item number 4, Foundry Alley.
Move to number 4 Foundry Alley, Iron Forge Alley. This one is requesting a material substitution due to the specified cladding material being unavailable. This is new construction. It is in a PUD, height districts 2.5 to 3, and in the Old City District. The location, this is internal to the block, so we've got context, aerial imagery there. This is sort of looking back into the property from Hanover Street, from Nassau Street. Mr. Jarrett, thanks.
Mr. Jarrett, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Luke Jarrett. I'm an architect with Synchronicity. And we are here this evening to ask for a material substitution for cladding for single-family, fee simple, new construction in mid-block at Foundry Alley. I'll very briefly summarize the development. And first and foremost, I'd like to start off by saying the Board of Architectural Review is not a precedent-based board. I am here tonight asking for material substitution for specifically these structures. I do not think that this request is something that will be appropriate to be considered globally. I'm not asking to change the material that I want to use anywhere else. In this particular situation, for these particular reasons, I'm comfortable standing here asking for material substitution. So with that said, I'll jump in. Foundry Alley is a PUD. Originally, it was an assemblage of parcels with a large mid-block open space where there was a foundry that burned that down, and development occurred around the perimeter. And what we ended up having was a lot of very deep lots with some existing historic structures along the front, and just a large slag keeping open area. Our client hired us initially to do review the site to determine what we thought would be the best way to use the property for residential. And based on the size and its location, there would have been a lot of opportunities to do different things. But we were adamant that the best way to use this parcel would be to try and return more housing that's very similar to the housing that's existing in the east side, which is fee simple, single-family residential at a scale that is relative to humans. So we worked really hard to do that. Zoning didn't exist to allow us to do something like this, so we went the PUD route. And going through the PUD route and working with the east side, we were also able to work in workforce housing into this development. It's one of the few private developments downtown that does have workforce built in. We're very proud of that. And again, it reflects the intent of this entire development was to be good Charleston urban infill, to be sensitive, to provide a very, very much needed product for people here that was contextual and appropriate. And we're really, really proud of how it's turned out. It's a great project, and can't wait to see it continue. Currently, the site is running with existing historic structures, and then the internal stuff is all new. If you could please jump to maybe there we go.
Currently, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, 7, 10, 11, and 12 are current. 8 and 9 has started. 13 and 14 is in a bit of a limbo. It has actually not gotten a conceptual approval, so that one's not talking about that one going today. Since we've been here last time, well, actually, I'll just jump back a little farther. A portion of the original approval, back when we took through BAR large, was that we were to use the 5/8" Hardy artisan lap siding on the building. Since then, that product has been discontinued and it is no longer available. A proposed alternate that the board is comfortable with is the Boral product. Boral makes a lap siding also that's a similar profile. And unfortunately, Boral this product was purchased, and it wasn't originally Boral, it was bought by Boral. When they did that, they did not increase their production capabilities, but they increased their margins. So this product is sold to lumber yards on an allocation basis. And builders can purchase from the lumber yards on allocation the amount of material they need to do their projects. We are not able to find anywhere enough cladding to do all the projects, all these houses. We would, if we could. The client that's building this now, Southwind, purchased it from the original developer. So this has always been a part of this project. They've always understood that the cladding needs to do this, and that's not been a problem. By looking really hard, beg, borrowing, and steal, they actually found enough cladding to do 2, 3, and 4, and 5. So those buildings are clad right now with substitute 4 and 5/8" lap siding. But there is no more of that stuff. They can't find it anywhere. Again, the builder is not against using the material. They would love to be able to buy this material and put it on this building right now, but we just, it is not available. Moving forward, that puts us in a situation where we've got uncovered buildings that are partially constructed, which is never good. And it also puts us in a position to try and figure out what we will do now. Meeting with the city, it has been expressed that the wood cladding option would be a potential. And probably the path at least jurisdictional resistance. However, as an architect and the designer on the project, I feel that using wood cladding on these houses is not the appropriate material. This is new construction. This is mid-block. And we would like to use a material that will perform through the long term in the best possible way. There's a lot of conversation about the quality of kiln-dried pressure-treated lumber. And I imagine that in some places they're able to get a lot of really great kiln-dried pressure-treated lumber. But in our experience, what we're able to get here does not perform as well as a fiber cement product. The lumber that we get, the moisture contents are higher. Our environment and location here also puts a really heavy load on the wood material. Wood checks, wood rots, wood warps. It's not dimensionally stable. Again, new growth, pressure-treated, kiln-dried timber is not the right material. We do not believe. We would really like to use a 5/8" fiber cement cladding. Again, I'm going to say this again. I know that there is a hesitation to use this material. We would not have come forward and designed with this material because of its perception in this part of town. From a performance standpoint, 5/8" fiber cement cladding, lap siding, and 5/16" fiber cement lap cladding, strictly from a performance standpoint, they won't have a demonstrable difference. They will all paint the same. They will perform the same. It's the same chemical compositions. The times where you would have a problem with this 5/16" material would be if the installation was poor, installed in such a way that it wasn't nice, even, regular, where it walked or moved. That would be a reason why it would be a bad material choice. However, the Board of Architectural Review will be reviewing this construction before it is approved for CO. And they will not accept that kind of work. So I would first say concerns with respect to the way that this material is applied shouldn't be appropriate right now, because the material will be reviewed by the City of Charleston for compliance and quality, and if it is deficient, it will not be approved and it will be mitigated. Second, I would also say we are very lucky in the City of Charleston to have livability court. And the livability court protects the rights of all of us that live here in Charleston. And it allows us to have some ability to assert quality controls over our neighbors. If somebody is not maintaining their house or their property in a way that's safe or good, we have a voice as Charlestonians. Not a lot of places have this. So long term, maintenance in Charleston, there's a route to where that can be addressed. So we feel that this material is really the substitution request for this very specific parcel, which is all new construction, which is all a very good distance from any public right of way. We have to look a long way. We have a graphic late in the presentation. If you could just kick it forward to that, please. Got to put overhead X on it. It's a duplicate of the one on the first page. I believe it's the last slide. There we go. So this is a really good slide to look at. There's not a place where you can be where you are anywhere, you're more than a full building away from any of these structures that are going up. The visibility will be minimal. I've spent a lot of time here on Nassau Street looking into the development because this is 3, 4, 5, and 6. These are the ones that are clad. They look great. But I would really be surprised if I was able to determine that the cladding thickness varied fractions of an inch that would be. I don't think that a material substitution will compromise visually the integrity and quality of the design. I've already mentioned fiber cement is an approved material. The performance, the way that it holds paint, the way that it holds up, the city's okay with this. It's already been approved and is approved. So it's not the fact that it's going to look less good. Really what we're talking about is the main difference, I think, between the 5/16 and the 5/8 will be we're not going to get the same shadow lines from the left cladding. From the last board meeting, we went back and we tried to find any other alternative that we could have so that we don't want to come here and take up the board. So client definitely doesn't want buildings to sit out there any longer than they need to be, but we looked at anything else that we might be able to use, and unfortunately, there's not really an appropriate substitute material. These buildings they're narrow. We designed them to be narrow with a lot of fenestration. They have a nice rhythm, and they're not suitable for like a vertical oriented board. I don't think a board and batten would be really the right look out here. That leaves us in some other materials, maybe some kind of shingles or things like that. Again, they're not really the appropriate material. That horizontal look, that's simple. These are background buildings. We think it's very appropriate. So sorry, back to what I was saying. Fiber cement is okay. The thickness is what's different. So what we would like to do is, we feel, and we have a slide maybe 2 back, if we change the exposure of our lap siding, 6 inches is what we had. And these are not ideal graphics, but they do give a little sense, maybe. Yeah, it was sort of supposed to be a compare contrast. So 6 inches is approved. Let's say that gives us X amount of 5/8 inch thick shadow lines along the exteriors of these buildings. If we reduce our profile to 4 inches and use a 5/16 inch cladding, while we will not have the same depth of shadow, which is pretty slim, we will have more pronounced shadow, and we think that character will help make this material perform visually better from the distances where it will be used in the right of way. Also, with the 4 inch exposure, there will be less likelihood of the material itself being asked to do something tricky. 4 inches exposure, the boards are stacked tightly. There's not going to be as much opportunity for things to do this. Again, even if they did do that, the City of Charleston would be reviewing this construction and would not, whether it's 5/8, 5/16 or anything, if it's not installed correctly, appropriately, and well, it won't be approved. So I would ask that to be considered. Also, one other final little point I would like to make: we don't have a lot of long runs on any of these buildings. So the majority of these are duplexes, so the long sides touch. So that's one long side that's not visible. The other long sides that we have are relatively close to the neighbors. This is the PUD, so we don't have the normal Charleston offset. So the longer sides of these buildings, the ones that have a little less fenestration and a little less movement, they're baffled against each other, and they're behind these other buildings. So it's really visually not going to come into play. We can bounce back to the three-dimensional overall. Doesn't work. It's a little tricky to see, but you can see what we've articulated the design so that all the view corridors into the site, we have architectural elements and features on the buildings that are going to be visible through there. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of movement here in these buildings. Where the prime visibility is. These ones here, you will see some of these across the rooftops, not very much. They step back. They have good shadow overhangs. We've got windows. We've got a lot of, what I'm trying to say is that we've got interesting buildings. There's a lot of depth in there, but I just don't think that we're going to find ourselves in a situation where in this particular situation, where the cladding change, allowing us to use the material that we can get, and I don't think that will be to the detriment of the development and the quality and the work. I really genuinely do. I wouldn't be here asking for this. This is very important development. We're very, very proud of it as well. In terms of sacrificing quality for material, I wouldn't do it. Our client has demonstrated that if there's any possibility at all that they could get their hands on the stuff, they would put it up. We can't get it. So we're here this evening to be allowed to use a 5/16" fiber cement cladding at a 4-inch profile, which is the narrowest we can kind of get. We might be able to get a little narrower. If that helps, that would be something we would pursue. We really truly feel that this is the best and most appropriate option for single family, non-historic, mid-block new construction. I think that I've covered all of my points. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any public comment on this agenda? Seeing none, city staff comments, recommendations.
Staff has spoken at some length with the applicant regarding staff's and board's previous concerns and the resubmittal of a 5/16" product. Applicant has indicated that the team may be able to obtain the Boral 5/8" shiplap siding for all but one of the remaining structures, but this would need to be verified, and I do think Mr. Jarrett has addressed some of that in his presentation. Number 3, applicant maintains that he has exhausted all options, that these structures have reached the stage where they need to be dried in. Reminds us that this is affordable housing, which may no longer continue to be if current conditions continue. Applicant is steadfast and passionate about the 5/16" siding, that it is an appropriate product, especially concerning the minimal visibility, and believes that the board's desire for an exploration of a different profile has been satisfied. Staff recommendation: while sympathetic to applicant's plight, the board has clearly expressed the 5/16" material to be inappropriate and inferior, and therefore staff recommends denial.
Thank you, Ms. Parrish. Any response, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please. I would like to. I understand your position. Thank you very much for working. It's a tough place to be. But the Board of Architectural Review is not a precedent-based board. There's not a prohibition on the use of this type of cladding downtown. There are materials that we do not use, we're not allowed to use. It's clearly delineated as not being allowed to be used. And this material has been used successfully all over downtown. Some of my very favorite buildings downtown have this on them, right? The ones that we use in our initial case study at the corner of Bogart and Rutledge by John Douglas Tucker. There are 3 houses. Adorable. They're very similar to what we've got here. They're beautifully maintained. They look fantastic. Don't think that by refusing to use a cladding material in a thickness where we use the same cladding material at a slightly larger thickness, I don't think that is A, the law, and B, I don't think that is applying unique and individual attentive judgment to these buildings. I understand that there that this is the way that we want it to be. I think that there is most likely a reaction to a lot of suburban development where cheap 5/16 society is slapped up, willy-nilly, and that maybe bleeds over. But please remember, the quality for this construction will be reviewed by the city of Charleston. This is not going to be some slapdash suburban area. This is downtown, and yeah, this material will perform no differently than 5/8. It will perform better than wood. It's contemporary and new construction, and we do feel in this very limited circumstance on just these buildings, I will never ask again, I promise you, for this stuff. Guarantee you, but in this one particular case, we would please request that the board consider the merits of the actual design and the actual material as opposed to something that we just don't have to do. And that's where I'll be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Last thing, just to say, we also, to make sure everyone had a chance to come out and see President Fields from the East Side Neighborhood Association meeting, we delayed our submittal so we could get in front of them to make sure we told everybody what we were up to give as many people an opportunity to comment as possible. There's nobody here to voice opposition from the neighborhood. There's nobody here to voice opposition from the historic societies. I'd like to point that out. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go first, and Luke knows how I feel about this. I would not use 5/16 inch material on the outside of the structure. That's it.
Got it. Short and sweet. Board comments.
I feel for the applicant, but I'm in agreement with staff recommendations.
Okay. Any further discussion? Their motion.
I'll make a motion to deny the application for material substitution.
We have a motion to deny the material substitution. Is there a second?
A second.
Ms. Wheeler seconds. It's therefore in order. Mr. Brown, how do you vote? In favor. Ms. Wheeler?
Yay.
Mr. Metters? And myself, nay, not in favor. Nonetheless, the motion to deny passes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Agenda item number 5 has been deferred at the request of the applicant. Agenda item number 6, 10 Wharfside Street.
10 Wharfside Street is the Charleston Maritime Center. The request is for renovation of the ground floor and patio of the existing Charleston Maritime Center for educational use and the new construction of a 2-story addition. This is considered new construction as it is an addition. It's in the Height District 4. The building was constructed between 1997 and 98, and it's in the Old and Historic District. The location is outlined in red. This is the building today. Great, and we will have the applicant present.
Good evening now.
Good evening.
My name is John Ciccarelli, John Ciccarelli Architects, and I have been proud to work with the aquarium on this project for some time now. If we can go forward, we can start you off and tell you a little bit about the project. One more, please. This serves as a key to the photographs. The aquarium has successfully had an educational program for several years now, and they're not just educating local students, but also students all over the state. In fact, that's part of their mission. And they currently take in kids busloads at a time, one busload at a time, and educate them in their facility, the main aquarium building. Their goal is to double their capacity with this building. So through an agreement with the city, we are going to, or we plan to renovate the lower portion of this building, the very underutilized lower portion of the building, and create a small addition. So as you can see, we've got some existing context. This is the view that you would see approaching from the aquarium, the water side, the beautiful ice machine, and the parking lot view. So, okay, next one, please. So as part of this project, we run through just some of the things we want to achieve in terms of community enrichment. We would like this to be an educational resource, and not just for the typical pedagogy that you see in classroom space, but the building as well. We'd like the building to teach, and we'll get into some of that a little later. We want it to be a model for sea level rise. The building currently is not compliant with any FEMA rules for having habitated space on the ground floor. We intend to address that. We want to enhance the public way. Currently, the lower floor has coiling overhead doors, and really not much happens with the exception of the ticket area in this portion of the building here. We would like to activate the lower space. And carbon footprint reduction, just by the use of reusing an existing building, we think that's far superior to a new space. The scope of the project is going to include a few things, primarily renovation of the ground floor, the small addition which you'll see in a minute. We're going to add a sprinkler and fire alarm system to the building, which it currently has none. Replace HVAC in the existing building, flood protection, which I'll discuss in a minute, and deferred maintenance. A lot of folks haven't seen these up close views of the building, but it is in very rough shape. And as part of this project, we are going to not just paint, but add a high performance coating system to the entire building. We're going to replace windows on the ground floor. We're going to replace light fixtures throughout the building on the exterior. And I don't know if you noticed that the polycarbonate panels on the upper walkway, and not only are they yellowed and dirty, but they're actually broken through in some locations. So that'll be part of this project. Next. So the primary sections through the building, this would be through the existing building. Really the only change would be the outdoor classroom space, which we're going to mimic the existing arch roof. And on the new building, the main takeaway from this is that the new addition is not going to be any larger than the existing building. Next, please. The existing site plan, the portion in blue is existing building to remain. The portion in red are the items to be removed, the ice machine, and the dumpster enclosure. Next, please. You can see that the new dumpster enclosure, which is sort of a blight on the building currently, will be moved to outboard on the parking lot, and the new addition, which will serve as support for the main building. Next, please. The existing ground floor plan, again showing the main portion of the building, which is currently a high bay space with the overhead doors, which is the part that is not utilized, the retail area, the ice machine, and the cooler that was supporting the ice machine. Next. And this shows the proposed first floor. So we have in white, the retail space is not officially part of the project, although it will benefit from the new sprinkler system and fire alarm. The tan portion is the renovation of the existing building, and the blue portion is the new addition. The light green are enclosed but untreated spaces, and this space here is pretty key because the children which will be educated here, part of the program is they will be at the end of these docks, dipping a bucket in the water, bringing the buckets back or nets, and examining what they found. Well, part of that is sort of a back of house function. It's not real pretty. They're going to be spraying out the buckets. They're going to be cleaning things. It's going to be muddy. So our challenge was how to put those items in close proximity to the water, but not have them look like a back of house function. So that's where the mudroom comes into play, and the concealment of that has ended up being a key factor in the design of the building. So next. Existing second floor, again, the ice machine to orient you. Currently, the second floor space is being utilized by the African American Museum offices, and it will continue to be used by them in the future. Next. So you can see the removal of the ice machine and the two-story addition. And of course, you can see the standing seam metal roof below of the outdoor classroom space. Roof plan, again with the ice machine and the existing standing seam roof. Next. And the new addition. And with the new addition being a low slope roof, we were able to conceal the HVAC equipment on the roof, and we have a 3-foot parapet to conceal it all the way around. So here we have the existing and the new elevations on the same page. This is the water side or the east elevation, and everything remains pretty much the same except for the addition of the outdoor classroom covers with sunshades and the new building addition. I'll get into that a little more in a minute. Next slide, please. And this is the existing parking lot side where it's really dominated by the existence of the coiling overhead doors. And we are going to go ahead and this will be classroom space, so you see some fenestration added. And another thing, so I think this would be a good time to address what's happening here. Rather than surround the entire building with temporary flood panels, which would be a nightmare to deploy, we have, to the greatest extent possible, included a permanent cast-in-place concrete wall. And that what that does is it greatly reduces the number of temporary panels that have to be deployed during an event. So you can see it largely here where the overhead doors will be replaced with a wall that is 2-foot freeboard above 50 FE. And that will come around, of course, into the retail space as well. And of course, the new building will not require it because it's all cast-in-place concrete, and it will inherently have that feature.
So you just do your doors?
You just do the doors. Yeah, that was the goal. I've witnessed some of those attempts to deploy these things, and that the guy who has to pull the trigger and say, go ahead and put them up, it's a tough decision. So we didn't want to put more of a burden on the aquarium than necessary. I believe one is duplicated, so I will go 2 now, please. So, like I said early on, we really wanted the building to not only teach from the classroom, we want the building itself to teach, and we want to get into some of that here, but taking some things that I've labeled notable, and we've given a one-word title to each of these things. So start up on the upper left with precedence. We wanted the addition to stand on its own, to work with the existing building, which I'm actually very happy to be working in this building. The Sasaki building is very, very dear to me. I've always liked it since it's been up. Didn't want to try to match it too much. So we took the material that has precedent on the site and has cast-in-place concrete. So not only does it have the precedent, but like I said, it inherently is going to make it easier to flood-proof this new addition. Continuity, we've got some horizontal data lines in terms of the roof, number one, which you can see we've extended and put a portion of curved roof to continue the sight line to make the addition feel more like part of the existing building. Also, we've taken halfway down an exposed channel that's on the existing building and embedded it into this cast-in-place concrete building. The insight, now we talked earlier about the mudroom, which is located here. That's the thing that we are covering up. And we came up with this idea for their fins, and we think they look neat. And sometimes it's okay for things to just look neat, but it's always nice if we can do multiple things with an architectural element. So it's an east elevation, so they're vertical. So it makes them an appropriate sun shading device. That's number one. So not only are they concealing, but they're also sun shading the mudroom, which is directly behind it. On the second floor, which will be used by the staff for office space, it's sun shading the glass on in that space as well. And you can see on this side, because it is a southern exposure, we have a horizontal eyebrow. The fins are also, if you go out on the DNR website, you'll see this image here. And what you're looking at here is all of the rivers in South Carolina. The fins will be embossed with each of the rivers of South Carolina. They will be further subdivided by color coding the tops of them, and these are the watersheds that the rivers are part of. So this is something that the kids can not only benefit from, but all the public, which will only increase in this area, will see it from a distance, it'll mean one thing, they'll get up closer, it'll mean something else, and we think they'll take away from that.
Oh, the river is going to be alphabetical.
They will be grouped by the color, but it won't be alphabetical. And then lastly, the imagery. We really think this was kind of fun, that a baleen whale. This image to me looks very much like this image. Bridges, we're talking about the physical bridge of the activities they're doing out by the water and the activities that they're doing in the classroom. This outdoor classroom serves as that bridge where they can actually take those buckets out in that space and really discover. Knowledge, what you see here, this is just a little additional thing, but we have a language here of paired pipe columns, and that's existing all along this walkway. We've taken those paired pipe columns, created another row to create this outdoor space, and then we've taken one of those pairs, and that's going to be a weather station. And the weather station will be completely standalone, powered by wind turbine and solar panel. And then that is also going to be a marquee, which you can start to see a sign here, and you'll see a little later. But the marquee will also have up-to-date live weather information. Let me wait for the next one. So you see some of the materials, cast-in-place concretes, the aluminum fins. We're looking at a couple different approaches to aluminum fins with a white in the front to mesh it more with the white in the building. And then on the side, we didn't talk much about this, but there is currently a grant, a federal grant that allows boaters to come down the East Coast and to stop along the way at certain locations. This is one of those locations. So the plan includes a place for boaters to shower, to do laundry, to use the restroom, and this would be the entrance for that. We've tucked it around the side of the building, and we've taken the fins to take the architectural element, repeat it on the side, but maybe have a different treatment on the finish. This is to just suggest how we intend to emboss the river names, standing seam metal roof, which matches the existing. And lastly, also on the outdoor classroom, this is an actual photograph from the guardrail up above. We intend to take those elements and bring them down the ground floor because we were trying to create enclosure, but not have it look too bulky and make it part of the building. Next, please. So next series of shots are renderings, and we'll basically take you around the building. So this is the back view about halfway down the pier, and you can start to see the color coding on the fins, the link, which is the mechanism that we've used to connect, but to separate the new addition from the existing building. That is the main entrance to the learning center, the learning lab. Next, please. A little closer look at the entrance. This is the side view, which is currently where the ice machine is, and the passageway there is adequate to accommodate emergency vehicle. In this case, it would be an ambulance. The city is not allowing fire trucks to go out on the water side, and there is adequate hose length. So get that covered. Next, please. That's an interesting one. That's it.
That's it?
No. We have a few more shots, but I'm not sure what happened.
I will say they were included in the Dropbox that we got. So
Yeah, I actually checked and they were there. So
yeah.
Sorry about that. The other images, take us around the building, and I'd be happy to go over any other.
I think we're set. Sure, of course. What's the matter?
The fins are stationary.
Yes.
Sheet A now. So you mentioned the white section, there's not a lot going on, and right-hand section, the blue section, all of these areas will have that retaining wall, the 2 foot or base flood plus
It's
2.
4'6" actually.
4
Yes.
foot 6. Okay.
Yes.
But that's all the way around, and including the new construction.
Well, the new construction the whole wall will be cast in place concrete. We are looking at a system now that it's kind of like tilt up where the insulation's in the middle, but it's a new system so they want to make this thing, for lack of a better term, bulletproof on the inside and the outside. So we're gonna have a lot of durable surfaces.
So I'm looking on the east side. You have
The water side.
The water side. You have doors, 1, 2, 3, 4 doors in that tan section. So all of those would just have flood-proof panels.
Temporary, correct. Yes.
And I'm just interested, but how that's going to be POW supported?
I'm sorry, what's
It's going to be POW supported, this new wall system that's going in, and how's that?
I
I
don't
think
it's going to need any pile support.
Okay. All right.
Because it's not, they're going to be, we haven't gone to that detail with structural engineer yet. I do not anticipate there's going to be pile support.
And this was a purely interest question. I
Yeah.
should have said that. That's fine. So, thank you. That's it. All right.
Good. Any public comment on this agenda?
I didn't have any public comment, but I was going to speak for the city as far as application.
Okay.
I don't want to delay anything here. I know you already had a long application, but I'm Edmund Most. I lead the capital projects group for the city of Charleston, so we do the majority of the city's development. If this is actually a city renovation project, that would be in our department. The aquarium approached the city some time ago. This has been in the making for several years, and we certainly support this application, and we're encouraged because you can see that the lack of capital maintenance on it for some time. It's also going to really activate a building that has a tendency to struggle over the years, despite Mayor Riley's administration to really promote it. We lost the shrimping industry. And they've done a really good job trying to retain and lease the space out. But we think this is a great opportunity for the aquarium. It's a great opportunity for the city. That whole waterfront is going to be activated in addition with the African American Museum. Certainly, they're going to be a little bit behind here, but we're in full support of this application.
Who's got maintenance when it's done?
The city has maintenance when it's done, which we're very appreciative the aquarium is taking that proactive step to have really good paint applications to the materials there and give it the love that it actually needs. So yes, I know you're embarrassing me just a little bit here, but I don't do the capital maintenance.
That was not the goal.
Construction.
That was not the goal. Thank you, Mr. Most. Appreciate that. I don't think we have anyone else from the public here on this one. City staff comments or recommendations?
Staff comment is staff finds this renovation adaptive reuse project to be well conceived with interesting and compatible additions to the existing structure. Therefore, we are recommending conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Thank you, Tori. Response from the applicant if they want to use it. Well chosen. Board discussion and a vote on this agenda.
I just want to say thanks to the applicant for a very clear presentation and for a very attractive and sensitive and successful addition and renovation of this project. It's very creative and very well done, and I look forward to seeing it move forward.
I would echo Ms. Wheeler's comments. Good, great adaptive use. Any further board comment or a motion?
I make a motion for approval of the application.
Motion for conceptual approval. There's a motion for conceptual approval from Mr. Metters. Is there a second? I'll second. Mr. Brown seconds.
So, Mr. Chairman, I might modify that.
Sure, you may.
May I ask Tori a question first?
Sure.
I'm comfortable with final details to staff. If I can modify my motion and we.
That's fine. How about restate your motion?
I'll make a motion for final approval with all details to staff.
Your motion is for final approval? Okay. Motion, motion for conceptual approval with final approval left to staff. Perfect. Is that a correct restatement of your motion? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Brown seconds. Ms. Wheeler, how do you vote on the motion?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Brown?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters? And myself, yay in favor. So if you can work out the bugs with staff.
Thank you very much.
Save you some time, Ben.
I'd like to say that we did actually reach out to the neighbors. We had outreach to them, and obviously none of them showed up. That's a good thing.
That's a good sign. Thank you to the applicant. Well done, and thank you to Mr. Metters for a constructive and creative motion that will lighten our body. Certainly. Agenda item number 7 has been deferred by the applicant. Agenda item number 8, 478 Meeting Street, appeal of a sign decision.
All right, this, I may have incorrectly, this may not be considered an appeal, but this applicant is asking for illuminated signage with some new signage on a storefront at 478 Meeting Street. The building is not rated. It's in the East Side neighborhood. It was constructed in 1996 and it's in the Old City District. Showing me this is the location of the building. And you'll see the existing signage right there. It does occur on 2 facades. This facade from Main Street. This is some context of what else is in the area. Okay, we'll have the applicant.
How you doing? I'm David Pinheiro with Charleston Signs. We're proposing illuminated reverse channel letters on this facade. We were asked to come to the board for your approval in regards to the illumination. So you can see here the previous, on the next slide, you can see the previous existing were also illuminated letters. They obviously, national company, merging with Dollar Tree, they're rebranding and they're adding that aspect of the Dollar Tree to that facade and doing the same on the front facade. This one here is the parking lot. So we're asking that you would approve the illumination due to the fact that it was previously and now it's going to the rebranding of the Family Dollar and the Dollar Tree, and that it is still within the 10% of the facade, the square footage being the parking lot side as well as the Meeting Street side. So these are just some schematics of, if you go to the next slide, of the illumination of it being halo lit, which is not base lit at all. It shines back towards the building and has a lighter halo effect to the actual letters themselves. You can go to the next slide as well. They're both the same. And then this is the front facade where you would see the 2 logos being stacked and still using the same sign band, which is designated for the building to put the signage in. They're going to be built exactly the same and all of that. So that's what we're asking for your permission to illuminate the signs, and I guess that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Pinheiro. That's short and sweet. That's good though. Any public comment on this agenda item? Looks like none. Ms. Parrish.
Procedural. Signage is to replace existing facade signage on the building which exists at the front and side of the building. While staff would not typically entertain the placement of 2 facade signs, these in a non-illuminated form may be thought of as a replacement in kind if they do not exceed the area of the existing signage. So we're recommending denial of any illuminated facade signage. Approval of proposed signage is not to exceed the area of existing signage at the same locations.
Thank you, Mrs. Parrish. The applicant technically has the ability to respond, but
no.
No comment?
Yeah, no comment.
Okay, very good. We will now move to board discussion and a vote.
I do have one question. The plans continue to say non-lit letters, but they're currently lit.
So the approach that we took, because it's a national company, they are in the process of rebranding. So when we first initially applied to VAR in regards to the Halo lit letters, they mentioned that we needed to come to the board to ask for that permission, and in the meantime, go to non-illuminated letters so that the rebranding could happen and that they were compliant with the rebranding of the national brand. So that's probably why it was kind of wishy-washy and a little bit of a confusion in that aspect of it.
Okay,
That makes sense.
I'm there. Yeah. So the plans that you are sharing with us are non-lit because you couldn't present lit signage.
Correct, I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I think I'm understanding that.
Yeah.
Very good. I understand you're trying to deal with the corporate process and have something.
Yeah.
Right. In the event that illumination cannot be approved, which I would suggest is a proven idea. Further board discussion.
I am not, I'm in agreement with staff and don't support the illuminated facade sign. Also, in terms of the proposed signs, literally, Victoria, you mean take the area of one side on each side, and then you could, you're saying that they could do two if they want to, but it just can't exceed the area of that one.
Can you go back to
Sure.
yeah. Small.
It would be
It'd
small.
be small, but I mean, I would agree with that.
So not.
So yeah, so like on the Meeting Street facade, we have signage code that limits the percentage and the size within the sign band. So that's considered the sign band. And yeah, you would be limited in size to what was done prior.
Right. So I'm in support of the staff's comments.
Thank you, Mr. Meadows. Further board comment on this change.
Clarification
Certainly.
again regarding staff comments. So you said, I thought that if it's within 10% of the facade, then it's allowed per the ordinance, and the existing signage might be a little less than that, right? It seems like what you.
I don't have the sign
And
code.
existing, it looks like it's 24 inches. Yeah. And the proposed is 41.
And the building itself is 96 feet that long way and 30 feet. So 10% of that.
Further board comments, questions?
I would be in favor of the denial of the illuminated facade sign, but I would, I think if the signage needs to be slightly larger than the existing area, just due to the new composition of the sign, the way it's shown currently, it would be acceptable to me.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. Further board comment. Motion.
I would make a motion for.
That's okay.
I would make a motion to the staff. Make a motion to support staff's decision and staff's recommendation.
So you would be making a motion to deny an illuminated facade signage and approve proposed signage in an area of the existing signage at the same location.
That's right.
Have correctly stated your motion. And is there a second?
I have a question on that then. What's recommended here, not to exceed the current area? The current area is less than 10% of the space available, correct? As determined by the ordinance.
I'm trying to Google some stuff.
It looks as though it might be less than 10%, yes.
I believe the applicant had mentioned that in the presentation.
That you did?
That it was.
Okay.
It was less.
Yes, I'll leave that.
Sure. So that we have a motion. Ms. Wheeler had her question addressed by staff. Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Is there another motion?
I'll make a motion for denial of any illuminated facade signage and approval of proposed signage.
The motion was to deny any illuminated signage and to approve the signage presented tonight by the applicant? Non-illuminated form. That's the motion as I've correctly restated for Ms. Wheeler. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Brown seconds.
So
We'll vote.
what if it's over 10%?
Then the permit department would not approve it.
Yeah.
I think that's something that the permit department would typically check.
Yeah, that's not our purview.
Because it would,
If there's a problem, it's like technical review committee or BZA or anything else. If they've got a problem, they'll turn it down and they'll come back to us and we'll do it again.
Can I mention one other?
Yes, sir.
I'm so sorry. I forgot to mention that they are open until 10 p.m. that night. So they would have little to no visibility to the weather.
And we are aware of that and we take that into account. We've adopted a few new sign policies, which staff may have brought you up to speed on. And we're aware that be they chain or national brands or whomever else, that presents a scenario that they're not typical dealing with. But we advisedly adopted the ordinance we have, or not an ordinance, guidelines we have in regards to signage. But we do obviously take note of Dollar Tree or Family Dollar being businesses that do in fact operate at night and have corporate, nationally approved chain corporate signage. There's a motion and a second, and we're going to go down the roll. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yea in favor.
Mr. Netters? Ms. Wheeler?
yeah, in favor.
And myself, yea in favor. Thank you to the applicant. Thank you. That's it. No further business being before
Just
this
checking
board.
the sign code.
We stand adjourned.
Sorry, spaced out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. The denial of illumination period, but
Size.
is fine. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Panera.
Have a good one.
Well, here's my thing. I think the applicant adequately explained that it is in a low visibility area. Part of me and you and I always get into it about what is and what is not today. I see that there's a very practical limitation on that project.